Hello, and welcome to this brief guide as to how we use baseline data and assessment at Kellett School. KEM is the service that we use at Kellett School to provide our baseline assessment and feedback. The details of the website are shown here, and you can go on there to find out more information. So what exactly is baseline assessment? A baseline assessment is a test designed to measure a student's aptitude for learning. The test is computer delivered and adaptive. What this essentially means is that as a student starts getting questions right, the computer will make the questions harder. Conversely, if they start getting questions wrong, it will make them easier until the difficulty of questions level out and the computer settles on a score for the student. As a student progresses through the school, they will take 3 of these tests at the beginning of the academic year in September: MidYIS in Year 7, YELLIS in Year 10 and ALIS in Year 12. If a student joins the school between these points, then they sit the relevant test a few weeks after arriving. All 3 tests work in a very similar way. They assess students in key cognitive areas which research has shown is linked to later academic outcomes. The first section is vocabulary, which tests word fluency, understanding and comprehension. The second is mathematics, which tests logical thinking and manipulation of numbers. The third is non-verbal ability, which looks at shape recognition, pattern matching and spatial awareness. The fourth and final section is skills, which is only tested on the MidYIS assessment. This looks at proofreading and perceptual speed and accuracy. Students will have recently received the feedback from their baseline assessment. There are 2 parts to this feedback: the individual pupil record sheets and the chances graphs. The individual pupil record looks slightly different depending on the baseline assessment the student has sat, but essentially they all show the same information. The individual pupil record shows a breakdown of how the student has scored in the different sections mentioned previously. Each section is standardised so that the average of everyone taking the test is 100. The scores are plotted on the chart and also shown in the table below. The lines on each point on the graph represent a 95% confidence band. If a student was to sit the test over and over again, they would always score slightly differently. For example, if they were having a bad day, perhaps because they'd not slept very well the night before, they might score a little lower than normal. Or conversely, if they're on a particularly good day and the questions suited them, they might score a little higher. But 95% of the time, the score they got would always lie within these bands. The table at the bottom also shows the band, percentile and stanine that each score lies in. The band is essentially a quartile. If you're in band A, that means your score is in the top 25% for all people sitting the test. Band B means the top 50%, and so on. In this example, we have a particularly able student. Their overall score has come out in the 97th percentile. That means only 3% of students would get a higher score. The stanine is just another way of breaking down the score into 9 sections as opposed to 4 or 100. It should be noted that the overall score is not simply an average of the other 3 sections. It is calculated independently. The second part of the feedback are the chances graphs. This is only provided for YELLIS and ALIS, for students who will shortly be sitting external examinations. The YELLIS obviously provides more of these charts, as a student doing GCSE exams does many more subjects. It should be noted that there may not be a chart for every single subject a student is studying. This is because the charts are only produced if the sample size is big enough. For example, only a relatively small number of students sit Chinese globally at GCSE, and therefore the graph for this subject often doesn't appear. These graphs are based on a large sample of students globally and use the correlation between the scores in the baseline assessment and how similar students have historically gone to perform in their examinations. That would be IGCSE for YELLIS or A-level for ALIS. The graphs show the probability of someone with the same score profile achieving each grade in the different subject areas. In this example, the student has an overall test score of 100.9. This means the most likely grade in A-level chemistry is a B, with a probability of 30%, as shown by the chart. However, you can see that they quite equally had a 28% chance of an A. YELLIS only provides one graph per subject, whereas ALIS provides two. The second graph is based upon the average GCSE grade. It varies from student to student which of the two graphs will give the higher probabilities. As a parent or student, this feedback really is just given to you for information. There is nothing further to act upon. However, as a school, we use this information in two ways. At a student level, teachers will look at this feedback and use it as a starting point to determine the target grades which you will see on upcoming reports. Kellett is an above average school, so for many students the probabilities given in the chances graphs will be an underestimate. This is factored in, as well as the teacher's individual knowledge of the student in determining the target grades. The individual section scores in the baseline assessment can also help teachers to identify particular strengths or weaknesses of students. This is valuable information that might help them to enable students to learn more effectively in their lessons. At a whole school level, this data is used by teachers to help monitor the progress of their classes and identify possible underachievement. It also helps the school to give a value-added measure for our external exam results at IGCSE and A-level. Thank you for listening. I hope you found the information in this presentation useful for interpreting the feedback. If you have any further questions, do get in touch with your son or daughter's form tutor or with myself directly at the email shown.